Good evening and welcome to Sim Racing Online. You join us here at the fourth round of the 1950s Grand Prix series. It's set to be a very interesting round. The admins have cooked up a little bit of a different weather for us today, so should give our drivers a little bit of a challenge. So we've had 3 rounds so far in this 1950s championship, and it's been very interesting to watch and commentate on. But if you look at our calendar, we are past half distance, and we started off at a venue called Pescara. That's 25 kilometers over in Spain, and then our drivers headed to Germany for the Saxon Ring 1967, and then in our third round we were at Dundrod in Northern Ireland, which provided a little bit of a challenge for our drivers. A lot of our drivers came unstuck with the narrow country roads of Northern Ireland, but now we are in sunny Italy. But it won't stay sunny for very long, but I'll come to that in a minute. So then our fifth round is going to be on the 2nd of April in France, a track called Rouen. And then our last round will be at Zandvoort in the Netherlands. So, story so far. If we look at our season standings, we do have someone out in front. It is Maddie Shepherd that leads the championship with 22 points. Her nearest contender is Tony Talviti in second. Unfortunately, wasn't at the last round, so dropped some points. So he's on 14. Then we have Julian Paws in third on 11. Gert van Osch, or Gert-Jan van Osch in fourth, and then Jim Cavallo in fifth. Now we are using the historic point system, which means it'll be 8 for first, 6 for second, 4 for third, 3 for fourth, and 2 for fifth. There is no point scores for sixth place, so points are hard to come by in the series. So our drivers will have their work cut out for them tonight in the streets of Napoli. So, without further ado, let's have a look at the cars we'll be using tonight. So we are using the 1950s car set. So starting off with the Aston Martin DBR4. It is one of the cars that our members haven't fancied taking through this series, which is quite a pity because it's a very nice sounding car. But as you can see, it debuted at the tail end of the 1950s. Now, another car that hasn't seen a lot of members take it is the Connaught Type B. Slightly shorter wheelbase and slightly more upright seating position, but again, it hasn't proved popular with our drivers. But one car that has proved popular with our members is the Cooper T43. With its mid driving position, it seems to be a good balance of stability and speed. Then we come to our always lovely sounding Ferrari 246. So we're sitting a bit further back in the chassis, and of course in gorgeous red colour, but although I think there is a yellow and a blue for our drivers to choose from. And then we move to the very distinct looking Lancia D50, what I think is 2 fuel tanks at the side of the driver. It looks very much like not like an open wheel car as such, but the wheels are uncovered, so it is defined as an open wheel car, but it's a very distinct look and there's a very distinct sound as well. So another car which is very distinct is the Lotus Type 16. The driver will sit quite far back in the chassis. Looks like a cigar box, but that's how Lotus is. Felt like they needed to design their cars in the late 50s. And then we have the Maserati 250F, a very classic car from the mid 1950s, and I'm sure you'll notice that on track. There's a couple of members that have taken that so far. So that's our cars for this evening. So let's go out on track and see who is taking a few practice laps around the track so far. So we've got 60 minutes of racing to come. Now, I did say there was going to be a little bit of a sting in the tail, so as far as weather is concerned, if we have a look at the weather, we are going to start off very, very sunny. But as we go along, the weather is going to get a little more wet and colder. So if we come into the 75% way through the race, there is a 100% chance of rain. The temperature is going to drop to 22 degrees Celsius. It's going to be very, very overcast. So the sunny beaches of Napoli are going to turn into a bit of a gloomy sky. We've seen a few puddles already that drivers are negotiating through practice. But these cars, then you're not expecting any pit stops specifically, so these drivers are going to have to negotiate on the tyres they have. So out on track we can see Gert van Osch at the moment through the streets of Napoli. Now there is limited information about this track so far. It did hold races between 1948 and 1962. And I believe it still exists in some form. Obviously these are public roads, and they still are public roads, so they probably are still very, very similar than they are today. But apparently it's now has cycling events around it, and I suppose it actually fits well with cycling. It's we tend to start off at the start-finish straight and then head down the hill through some of the twistier sections, and things you have to watch out for, or what our drivers are going to have to watch out for. Now, although the track can be very, very wide, it does narrow in places like Julian Porras can see up through this section here, so drivers have got to be very careful through this section. Walls on either side, houses on either side. So as you come up to the top of the hill, the cars are going to get a bit light, and then as soon as you come up to the top of the hill, you're heading back down again. You can see the sea in the background. You see the coast. So as I say, there are curbs that can unsettle the car on either side, and also some very solid trees and lampposts. Just waiting for the driver to go a little bit wide. Coming through the final corner here. There is a nasty bump I've spotted in the final corner. So drivers have got to be very wary for that. And I imagine that they're going to have to be very wary of it in the wet as well. So go and get Van Osch in his latest 16. So currently topping the timesheets at the moment is Maddie Shepherd with a 2:04.3. Tony Talvidi is not far behind, only half a second. So as I said last week, this circuit was made by a developer called Atello Tracks. They did make the first circuit called Pescara. This is one of their older circuits, although they did remaster it a little while ago. It's a beautiful recreation of what is the 30s, 40s, 50s type racing track you would have seen going through the streets. Safety didn't really exist back then, it seemed. But drivers are obviously going to have to be very careful as well. Case in point, we see a Lancia falling foul of one of those trees. That poor cameraman probably had the shock of his life. But lots of little bumps here and there that can catch you out. But it does look like quite a bit of rubber has gone down. And there's a little sections of the track like leaves and things. I don't know if they're slippy. But the track has dried out a bit now. There's only a few puddles left, but the majority of the track is drying. We will be rolling over to qualification in about 5 minutes. So drivers have got to get their eye in. Always makes a little bit of a mistake. It looked like he had a little bit of a wiggle on the way in. think the fact that there were a lot of walls there probably saved him, but every track on this calendar has provided a particular challenge. It's a very interesting way to get around that bottom section there, power sliding around now. So here's this Lancia D50 I was talking about earlier, the lovely engine note. It sounds beautiful. One of the best engine notes in this series that we have, along with the Ferrari. This is Mattias Estrella just taking us around the streets. So we come up into one of the town sections here. So as I said before, it does narrow in sections. The corners don't really have, or I haven't been able to find any names, so this section I think is going to catch a few people out. I've got to be patient up here in this narrow section, and then possibly able to push as they go back down the hill again between the trees, not getting too distracted by the lovely view. Able to come down to what is going to be the final corner. So as I say, it's going to be an extra challenge for our drivers. So last week we had the challenge of country roads in Northern Ireland, which did prove a little bit difficult for some of our drivers. There's a lot of things to collide with in Dundrod, and unfortunately a few people did fall foul to running a little bit wide. This track is full of solid objects. So this is Michael Masaryk in the Ferrari 246. Such a beautifully sounding car. You can see the sky is maybe getting a little bit dimmer. So we're having similar conditions that we would have in the race. You can see that cloud cover coming over. So you can see for quite a distance, I'd imagine that drivers are going to get a very good representation of when the weather is about to appear. So we'll be in the last, I would say, quarter of the race. So it's whoever can keep their wheels on their wagon. Now, we've seen in earlier races the drivers have been battling in the first 15 minutes or so to half an hour, and then it does settle down a bit, but it seems that fatigue does set in. 60 minutes is a long race in these cars, and this course with quite a number of corners and quite interesting sections and challenging sections. I remember where you are on the track. So the challenge we had with Pescara was 25 kilometers of a very similar layout of circuit. So all of the tight sections of Pescara were very much like this, but it was 25 kilometers long. I was very lucky that most of our drivers had the opportunity to take a little bit of a rest on the big long straights, but I don't think there is any such opportunity at this track in Napoli. It is very full on, so they've got to remind themselves where they are on track, think of where they're going to pass other drivers, because the start finish straight is quite wide. That might be a good place to have a passing manoeuvre. But turn one can be very, very difficult. Because it does, you come through turn one, it does tighten up a little. It's a bit of a wide apex. You want to spot where your apex is. It's a curb somewhere on the left hand side, and then you head down the hill. So last few minutes of practice. So we will be changing over to qualification in short order here. We've got a good number of drivers that have turned up for this round. It's good to see how much good support this series is getting. Now, do remember that Sim Racing Online is not a closed community. You can join up if you go to simracingonline.co.uk. Feel free you join any one number of our series that we have available. We do run a lot of R-Factor leagues, but we are stepping into Le Mans Ultimate Automobilista 2. So I was wondering there whether the track would stay a little wet, but it looks like we've probably stayed with the track condition that we left in practice. So who's going to be the first out? So wondering whether some people want to go out first, perhaps get their eye on, get their eye in. I also wonder whether that view, looking up the main straight there, very scenic view. So it looks like Tony Dalriti is possibly the first one out of the pits. He's got a clear track in front of him, which should help. Whether you want to be in close proximity to other drivers, I do not know. So that's championship leader Maddie Shepherd, who has exited the pits right behind another Cooper driver. So I'd imagine she would probably want to get past that driver to stretch her legs a bit in the fast lap. So rules for sim racing online: you need to do your out lap, you need to do your fast lap and your in lap. And if you crash out on circuit, that is your qualification over. There is no restriction on how many laps you can do. So possibly take the full 10 minutes. I have been listening to some of the drivers' feedback. They've been obviously giving feedback on how the series has gone so far. A lot of members have said that some part way through the race that the tyres don't necessarily wear, but the handling does change through 60 minutes of racing. So the car can start off quite stable on a full fuel load, but then late on it can get a little sketchy. So let's see if we can go on board with Tony Talviti. I am using automatic cameras for this series, which does give me a hand, but this should take us through the first part of the lap. So coming around the final corner, we're going to head up the main pit straight. Tony Talviti is going to head over to the right hand side. He wants to avoid that white line because that means he will dip into the pits. And a couple of gears, there's a couple of apexes there, so a tiny little S before you even get to the main turn that's turning left, which heads down the hill. So again, missing this curve on the inside. Tony managed to hit it just a little. And then you head down the hill again, another S bend, but you've got to pick your apex here. Double apex right hander. And then again through the trees. A corner that seems to drop away from you, even though you've got the nice sea view on the right hand side. You can't pay attention to that. And then we go up into the town section. So tight right hander. Remember that there are bales on the outside. And then we head to this really awkward late apex. Hopefully we weren't able to stay on board with Tony. But you head into this really wide late apex corner, which will then head up the hill. So Maddie Shepherd putting in the fastest sector of qualifications so far. So the first sector 47.8. Julian Paws is probably the only driver that's close. I can see on the board 48.1. Tony Talviti here as he heads up the hill out of the town. As you see, the car gets air at certain points of this track. Maybe Shepherd doing the same. You have to cut it close to the walls on the inside and the outside. And avoid those curbs. I don't know if Maddie Shepherd is going to be lucky if she can get it back to the pits. She can keep going. Indeed she has. She's It is unfortunate. She was heading for a fast lap there, but Tony Tauriti has got a provisional pole with a 2:04.3. It basically matches the times of practice. Paul second, only 0.5, and he's 6/10 behind. Van Osh just come past us in the Lotus there. Maddie heads into the pits. Some repairs and another go. So Gert Van Osh comes across the line. He's in 4th place. Kanzuris has popped up to 3rd. There's a little bit of a gap between 2nd and 3rd there. Maybe 2 seconds, so a bit of a pace advantage for the top 2. I'm wondering whether Maddie Shepherd could possibly go out and get another lap in. So this is the wide entry and then headed up the hill. The car takes ages to be able to get back on the throttle. You don't want to open the throttle too early because you're a bit. The car is a bit off camber, it seems. And head up the hill through this section and keep going up and up and up and up. It's a surprisingly long lap. You don't really realise it. A beautiful section coming through here, close to the walls, over the crests. So I imagine this section is probably going to make these, particularly the Coopers, might get a little wiggle on when they're coming through this section. I've just seen that Bro has now popped up to 5th, so he may have some work to do. So 5 seconds off the leader. Jim Cavallo in 6th, it's the Maserati. And John Vandergeest in 7th. Maddie Shepherd did put in a time in 8th, but I'm sure she can go better. 13 seconds off the leader. So thankfully, one of our league painters has been able to make a couple of custom paint jobs for these Coopers. I was complaining from the last round that there are a lot of Coopers, but it is unfortunate that they're mostly all green. So thankfully I might be able to tell a few of these apart. So we have Tony Tauriti in this very fetching looking scratched, it looks like. Very scratched paint job. And we have John Vandergeest in the blue Cooper with a dirty nose. So I'm wondering whether it's possibly going to... Drivers want to get a lap in before the rain possibly comes down in qualifying. I'm not sure whether it's... Not sure whether we will see rain in qualifying. We are only 2 minutes to go, so possibly not. It possibly only is the race session that has rain, and it is towards the end of the race, but it's going to get progressively colder, and the rain will appear somewhere in the last third or last quarter of this race, which should spice things up a bit. It might slow the pace of the race down, which I think some people might appreciate, but it's going to make it even more difficult. Now, we saw from last round at Dundrod, there was a lot of drivers that were just consistent. They kept going and were able to pick up places from people that had problems. So championship leader now down in 9th place. You can see that a good first sector on the track as we pick up Maddie Shepherd. There's a little bit of traffic ahead. So quickest of all in the first sector, and it's like quickest of all in the second sector as well. So I think that's Gert Van Osh ahead. And of course this is qualifying. Gert Van Osh doesn't have to move out of the way. He's probably on a fast lap as well. But he's going to notice a very fast Cooper behind him. As we come into the final corner of the track, where is this going to put Maddie Shepherd? He's got 1 minute left, so we've got time to do another lap. So remain Lebro in a nice red Cooper. So as I said at the start of the broadcast, it's great that to see these members have taken to this series back in the 1950s. I do love a historic series, and we are going to be running another historic series here at Sim Racing Online, which is going to be the 1967 cars. So that should be very interesting. Also a varied number of historic tracks being used for that, but I'll give details of that when we come to it. So Tony Tauriti parking his Cooper. He feels like he can go no better, and Matty Shepherd has gone to the top of the timesheets with a 203.1. Tony could get into the 203s with a 203.8. I think Maddie Shepherd thinks that she can go a little bit faster, so Gert Van Osch and Maddie Shepherd having a ding-dong battle in qualifying. And sometimes it's possibly good to actually follow a faster driver to pull you around the track and give you a little bit of confidence. You can see that rubber has gone down, which is going to help the drivers coming into the race. But that will get washed away in short order. So the clock has run out as they head down to what is the final corners of the track. We've got about 4 or 5 people on the track at the moment. So Andy Shepherd's going to come across the line for a final lap, as is Gert Van Osch. So Gert Van Osch goes up to 4th place, and Amanda Shepherd keeps her provisional pole. We do have the drivers just coming across the line. We've got 5th place, Can Costas Kanzouris in this final section of the track. Improve on 5th place. He is a little bit away off 4th place, at 1.4 seconds to find. So improves his time, but not his position. So you can hear other drivers on track at the moment. I believe that's John Vandergeest just coming across the line. John Vandergeest goes into 9th. And Phil Brown pops up into 6th place. So, all drivers have completed their qualifying runs. Let's take you through the starting order. So, the starting order has been set. We're going to go to the starting order so you can see who is where on the grid. Starting order, here we go. So drivers have got a little while in practice, but Maddie Shepherd has taken up pole position. Tony Tauriti 2nd, Julian Paws in 3rd, Gert Van Osch in 4th, Costas Kanzouris in 5th, Phil Brown in 6th, Romain Lebreau in 7th, and 8th, John Vandergeest. A sea of Coopers. Julius De Silva, didn't see much of him in 10th. Ben Summers in 11th. And we have the Ferrari of Michael Masaryk in 12th. Simon Barnes has joined us in the Maserati in 13th. And we've got Matthias Estrella in 14th in the Lancia D50. And then Marius Labioda in the Ferrari in 15th. So a good number of people on the grid. We will be having a standing start for these drivers. So drivers are just doing their last minute checks, making sure that they've got enough fuel to be able to complete this race. Maybe thinking about whether they want to put a little bit extra fuel in. They may use a little bit less fuel in the wet weather. So just as a reminder, weather for this particular series will be, it'll start off sunny, it's going to get cloudier as we go to halfway through the race. And then when we get to about a third to go, maybe a quarter to go, the rain will start coming down. The track will get a little colder. So our track temperature has gone up to about 44, so the rain will fall. But will the hot weather actually keep that away from the track? Because the more the cars go round, the more heated the track will get. The drier, we may even see a drying line, perhaps. So drivers just going around for their final checks, their final warm-up laps. So a standing start. We've seen a few people that have stalled on the grid, not managed to get their clutch bike points in the correct place. So we see that it's quite a wide starting grid and quite a way up until turn 1, but it is a little bit of a choke point up to turn 1, 2 and 3 before they head down the hill into the main section of the track. So you just got to have your wits about you in the first part of this race. The last thing you want to do is get tangled with somebody and have damage. So survival is key early on in this race, so that you can be there near the end of the race. So it doesn't take much. You can see just a slight mistake for, I think that's Maddie Shepherd, and taking a little bit of a chunk out of the wall. So looking at the view over the coast of Napoli, you can imagine that this place is good at sunrise and sunset. I was quite shocked to see what the weather forecast would be. I was actually planning on eating an ice cream on the beaches of Napoli, but it looks like I might have to eat an ice cream under an umbrella as we're going to the race session. So we've switched over to the race. The cars will be gridding up, so it will be a standing start. So we'll have to be very, very careful. So it looks like we're going to be going 3 by 3. That should make things a bit interesting. Actually, it's 3 by 2 by 2. To the front. Matty Shepherd is the last to pop into the pits. Unfortunately, it would seem to have 2 DNFs here. I don't know whether the admins are going to decide to possibly restart this race. That is very strange. 2 DNFs at the start. So 2 back contenders may be out of the race. But races carry on, so our drivers head down the hill. Tony Talviti gets away from the rest of the field. The tower at the edge of the screen will update itself, so I'm getting a little bit squirrely in that first section. We head down the hill for the first time. Tony Talviti makes a mistake going into that first section. That gives Costas Kanzouris the lead. So Van Osh following that red Cooper of, I believe, is Romain Lebro. So everyone getting through okay, although we've got Spinner in 13th place. So I think Matthias Estrella has just gone round. We see Phil Brown going round at the final part, and people having to take evasive action there. Hopefully no one no one hit them at all. So Matthias Estrella has dropped down the order. But meanwhile, Costas Kanzouris is ahead. Van Osh chasing in the Lotus. So I believe that's possibly Matthias Estrella in the yellow Ferrari. They're taking it very slowly, so possibly got damage. So Alias Labioda in the Ferrari being chased by believe it's Simon Barnes. Is that Simon Barnes? Looked like Simon Barnes, maybe not. Another green, one of those cars, really confusing me. But Romain Lebreau in third place. Julian Pause is in the race. It looked like he DNF'd. Our leader has actually DNF'd. That collision with the tree, possibly terminal damage. Possibly taking a wheel off and not being able to get back to the pit. So that's a big turn up. That's one of our championship leaders. So the championship may change hands tonight, which is very surprising. But Kanzaris leads, Van Osh in second, Lebreau in third, and Julian Pause, who's going to scoop up these points, in fourth. He's currently in the third in the championship from memory. And we have early spinner. See, two cars coming together there. I'm not sure who that was behind. It was perhaps De Silva and Barnes there. Barnes getting going, popping off the curb, made a little bit of a mistake. So a lot of mistakes early on. Didn't see a lot of those mistakes in practice. We see Michael Masaryk taking it easy in the Ferrari. I believe he started right at the back of the grid, but he's now up to 11th place. So a big turn up for the book. So the top two are away. 3 and 4 are very close together here. Julian Pause does fancy us trying to get round the outside, but it's very tight coming up into this section. Not wise, I suppose, going side by side. But it looks like Julian Pause does have a little bit of a pace advantage. And we did see Romain Lebreau doing some very interesting power sliding coming out of some of these turns. So down the hill they come. So where is Julian thinking about passing? Very tight corners, or deceivingly tight corners in this race. Maybe nipping up the inside, not quite the space there. It's got to be very, very careful. Perhaps it might have been better waiting for this big long straight here, so we could have been closer down the straight. So drivers are able to get past the pit line after the safety car. So Julian has picked his place, and it's up the inside down into turn 3, I think that is. Maybe held onto it, but Romain Lebreau is trying to fight back, but the course does get a little bit tighter down this section as we head up into the town. It does look like Estrella perhaps too much damage and has decided to retire, so we have 3 retirements so far as this battle rages on between 3rd and 4th. So a little spin for Ben Summers on the track map. Looking down the place, but he has got going again. So Phil Brown in that lovely sounding D50, the Lancia D50, being chased by Ben Summers at this point. Julian Pause and Romain Lebreau still trying to hold on. So the top 2 have got away, but there is a little bit of a gap between the top 2 by about 2 seconds or so. So you see that lovely dark line, all that rubber being put down in practice and qualifying. It's going to help the drivers now, but it's not going to help further down into the race because of the wet weather is going to come. So look at those clouds, or watch for those clouds coming over. It's nice, a cloudless sky at the moment. So Romain Lebreau trying to stay with Julian Pause. 53 minutes to go. A long old race. So Kanzaris still leads, Van Oss second, Pause third, Lebreau in 4th. Cavallo has popped up to 5th place. Seems Labiota foot started way back, but Labiota's been able to capitalise on mistakes and has gone up the field. Van Osh chasing on to the leader. Still 2 seconds, but he's just giving a watching brief. And we saw this a couple of times in the opening rounds that a few people were hanging back a little and just perhaps sizing up their opponents. And late on in the race, they were able to make a bit more headway. But this incoming weather is going to spice things up a bit. I'm seeing on the track map maybe Phil Brown has gone around. I think he has, but he's able to get going again. So the battle that he was having with Ben Summers is now swapped. And Ben Summers is out in front of Phil Brown. But Cavallo out on his own in 5th. He does have a driver behind him by 3.5 seconds, but so we didn't see much of Gilles de Silva in the practice laps, and he is running a lovely gold Cooper. Currently on the tail end of top 10, so remember there are only points for the top 5 in this race. So Phil Brown and that lovely sounding D50, I'll never tire of that engine note. Ben Summers gets it all wrong coming into that right-hander, and Phil Brown possibly in the wrong place to actually capitalise on that as they head into the tighter town section. This part reminds me a lot of Targa Florio as you head through the city, but this has got a lot more elevation change. Maybe more suited to the Pescara city sections that had a lot of elevation change as well. But this is looking like a good battle, although Ben Summers gets a little bit sideways and Phil Brown was in the opportune place to overtake at this latter half of the lap. So battle resumes, swap places again. Ben Summers perhaps feels like he can overtake down the straight. Doesn't feel like he's got enough momentum, or doesn't feel confident enough down into this section. Phil Brown does get it a little bit wide, but holds on to it. So Julian Paws, the places have swapped around again, and we've seen getting it all wrong coming down into that section. What happened to Julian Paws? It looks like we have another DNF. That was a bit strange. I wonder whether he clipped the curb. He went, instead of going right, he went left and straight into the barrier. So unfortunately, did I give him the commentator's curse? The commentator's curse perhaps playing a part there. I did say he may be picking up some points, but not for this round. So championship is going to be wide open for the next 2 rounds of this, which is going to make it very interesting as we head to the 5th round. Oh, that was very close. Was that Cavallo that had gone round? Cavallo probably gave Yoda a little bit of a shock there. Not really much Cavallo could have done, being sideways across the track. Labiota just had to pray. But Labiota now up to 4th place. So Gert Van Osch putting in the fastest lap of the race, 1.2 seconds now for the lead. So you can see it's closed up a little bit. So do you want to push now to get past before the rain comes? Do you want to be stuck behind someone kicking up spray in your face? That's the thing. So the leaders are coming around to lap 12th place of Simon Barnes. So we're heading to a little bit of a tighter section. Simon Barnes keeps it tight so the leaders can go round the outside. Same with 2nd place. So up the hill into the wide section here. Wide entry. It's a very, very late apex, and it gets very loose, or the car gets very light coming up to the exit of the turn. fastest lap time of a 2:05.3. So a second or so off the qualifying times, but Labiota probably thanking his lucky stars for being able to miss that Maserati that was broadside across the track and in one of the tightest places on the track as well. So very, very lucky. Right, so down the hill again, the gap has opened up a little, so maybe a little bit of a mistake from Van Osch. This meant that Canzeras can possibly get away. John van der Geest in 6th, 5 seconds behind his nearest competitor. So down the front straight again. You can see the entire length of the front straight in that camera view. You head down the hill into turns 1, 2 and 3. John van der Geest perhaps clipped a little bit of a curb there, but didn't hit anything solid. That's one thing you've got to watch out for. So you can possibly hop up on the curb, but there are lots of trees waiting for you. I'm seeing on the track map that the driver has gone around 10th place of Gilles de Silva. He has got going again, Gilles de Silva back down in 10th, so no harm done. So Labiota now continues in 4th place. 11 seconds to catch up to the leaders, but we'll soon see who is the wet weather specialist in these cars. We did have a little bit of wet weather in practice, but I don't think it was in full rain conditions, and the track was moderately dry. So this track in full wet conditions may be quite treacherous. Michael Masaryk currently in 9th place, chasing Ben Summers in 8th. So now Phil Brown has got past Ben Summers and is up the road, but Ben Summers goes slightly wide. Managed to gather it up there. I thought he was going to oversteer into Michael Masaryk, but managed to hold off. So Masaryk is coming up the field now in 8th place. He can now chase after Phil Brown. The battle of the best sounding cars on the grid. So over for another lap, we've got a quarter of the distance gone, so time flies. Still the fastest lap time in the race of 2:05.3. So looking at the drivers that we got on show here, we'll give you a bit of a rundown on where they are in the championship. So Brett Van Osch currently with 10 points in the championship, 4th in the championship. He's been on the podium twice in this series. Looks like it's Gilles de Silva letting the leaders through. So he's had a 3rd in the first round. I think he had 12th in the second, and he came out with a 2nd place in the 3rd round. So getting better perhaps as we go along. We'd probably like to go one better. Currently in 2nd place. Canzeras just ahead. So 43 minutes to go. It's Canzeras that leads. Van Osch in 2nd. Bro in 3rd. Labiota in 4th. Cavallo in 5th. Looks like Van Osch is coming up against is John van der Geest ahead through one of the tightest sections of the track. Well, that is Canzeras. That is the battle for the lead. So there are 2 blue Coopers, just to confuse me. I think one has a dirty nose, which is John van der Geest, and the clean one is Canzeras. So it's Canzeras just going by. So maybe a little bit of a mistake from Canzeras, which has allowed Van Osch to close up a little. So it's Cooper Climax versus Lotus 16. come down the main straight. So as we've got lots of trees overhanging the track, particularly in the first section of the lap, those sections are possibly not going to be getting dry when it comes to having some rain. So that's possibly one thing to watch out for. So it'll be a little bit treacherous down here in the wetter portion of this race. So Kanzurus kicks on in the lead to stay consistent. Now, do you want to be chased or do you want to be the chaser? That's the thing. Kanzurus will definitely like the clear view out in front once it starts raining. We've got the constant noise of that Lotus 16 just shadowing in the background. So as we go through 20 minutes gone, let's see who is the biggest winners and losers from the first portion of this race. So it does look like from the list of positions at the side, Lapioda was our biggest winner with up 11 places. And only Phil Brown dropped 1 place. So Lapioda was the biggest winner in the first section of this race from the start. His Ferrari up to 4th place, which is good effort. That means that will be, if I've done my numbers correctly, 4th place is 3 points. So Gilles de Silva kicking on in 10th place. I'm looking down my list. Don't think Gilles de Silva has scored any points. There are a number of drivers being found of this historical point system. Usually we will be using our inbuilt point system, which will be 40 points for 40 points for first, and the points go down to 23rd. So extra challenge for these drives to stay in the top 5. So Kostas Kanzouras, looking back at his stats, he's currently down in 6th place in the championship. He has taken place in all rounds, but hasn't managed to crack the podium just yet. So he got an 8th in the first round, 4th in the second, and 9th in the next. So struggling to break the top 3, and this will be a game changer for his championship chances. A nice number of points to bump him up the order. He's only got 3 so far. And one of his rounds were a scoring round. Ben Summers now not bothered by anybody in 9th place, as Rick has pulled out a gap. So Simon Barnes, I don't think Simon Barnes has been with us in this series. He took part in the first round but wasn't able to be around for 2nd and 3rd, so it's good to see Simon Barnes back. Phil Brown is another driver which I expected to be further up the field. He's had some good results which have unfortunately been undone by some accidents. We did see a dramatic crash from him in the round 1. We were focusing on the other drivers, and I saw a blue Lancia D50 flying off the track in the background, so yeah, it was good for the viewers and good to commentate on, but I don't think Phil liked it very much. So Kanzura is kicking on, but Van Osh back down to the 205.2, so getting faster and faster. You see that big, lovely rubber line. These drivers should make the most of it. So Phil Brown has now caught John Vandergeest, it seems. So that's the next battle on track. So it's going to be Cooper being chased by this. I suppose it's not wider than the Cooper ahead. It's possibly handling a bit heavier in these tighter sections of the track. And this track doesn't really have any big straight sections to exploit the horsepower of the faster cars. So Gert Van Os still pushing on to fight for that lead, as is Phil Brown to fight for 6th place. So Phil Brown has fought his way back up. He's already passed Ben Summers, right on the tail of John Van der Geest coming up to the main straight. So does he fancy a go up to turn 1? What was his exit like? So John Van der Geest not feeling the need to go defensive as they head down to turn 1. So it didn't shake for a move up into turn 1, heading down turn 3. Head down the hill. Got to think where would be the best place to pass around here. Very tight sections of the track. That's Gert Van Os. Is that Gert Van Os going around? I think he clipped the curb. So he was getting very close. But he's got going again. That's now dropped him 7 seconds off the lead. Good to see in the background there. He looked like a bit of dust kicked up, and he looked like he maybe got caught up with the curb. I don't think there's any damage done. Doesn't look like he's struggling with the car at all. So alone. That's unfortunate for Van Os, but Costas Kanzouras a bit more of a breather, so he's now not got a Lotus 16 glued to his rear bumper. So the closest battle on track, Phil Brown is still hassling John Van der Geest up into the village section, picking up the dust on the inside again, very close to that inside wall. So this might not be for points at this stage, but still battling on for 6th and 7th place. Phil Brown gets very, very close. Can't quite slow his D50 down in time. Just gives them Van der Geest a little bit of a nudge, but no harm done. It looks like he was harder on the brakes than John Van der Geest ahead. Looks like that D50 may be a bit slower to react, less nimble than the Cooper. So 35 minutes to go, so nearly at half distance. You can see those clouds coming over and a little bit of mist in the background, so it's not long before we get a little bit of weather intervention. So down the hill we come. So it may benefit the drivers that don't have any cars around them at the time, so spray won't be an issue. We'll have to see whether spray does hang in the air around this track. So we did have 15 drivers at the start. We are now down to 11 runners. So there'll be less drivers on track. It means less spray, but it also means less drivers to kick up the water and get a little bit of a dry line. So I'm interested to see how wet the track is going to get. Now I've got my stats at the top, and I can see that it's now coming down in temperature. We're now down to about 23 degrees. The track temperature is still staying around 43. So I wonder whether that track temperature is going to save these drivers a little. Phil Brown shadowing that Cooper, sizing him up through this tight city section. It doesn't look like he's far away from the wall there. I'd love to be able to see a replay on how close these drivers are getting. But that curb can bite on the outside. I think we did see Gert Van Os hitting that curb on the outside. It seems to jut out a little. So coming down the hill again. Phil Brown's just got to pick his point. Does he want to go particularly offline to overtake this Cooper? So he's can't quite get the run off the final corner. That Cooper is running way down the straight. But I'm seeing a little bit of rain coming down on the surface of the cars. Perhaps not settling yet. I think Phil Brown is probably getting a little bit anxious of being behind this Cooper when the rain's about to fall. would. I would a little bit anxious being right behind another driver. So we should spice things up a bit. So 32 minutes, we're nearly at half distance. We're not expecting any pit stops. Putting on different tyres will not make a difference because these are by supply. You don't get wet weather tyres or slick tyres in the series. Not all weather tyres. So Lancia D50 versus Cooper Climax. This currently is the closest battle on track, you can see. See, Masaryk is creeping up there. He's only 4.8 seconds behind in that yellow Ferrari. You can just see him dipping into view just as the camera view changes. So ninth place. Oh, Ben Summers with that. Yeah, I believe Ben Summers may have gone round the start finish straight, but he's managed to get going again. So clouds are coming over. It's our leader now with a lovely view ahead. Down the hill. Kanzurus doesn't have to worry about a driver behind him. All he has to worry about at the moment is lapped cars. Sky has got a little bit darker, and we're possibly going to be dealing with a little bit of wet weather in the next couple of laps. Phil Brown did maybe find out that it might be a little bit slippier now coming into that turn 1, 2 and 3 section. Down the hill we come. So we won't be beating our lap time over 2:05.3. So it is a battle between first and second, but second has now closed up. Now 6.4 seconds. But first and second are matched in lap times of the 2:06. So it's maybe going to be who makes the less mistakes in this latter half of the race. The rain has come particularly early. I didn't think it was going to come at the half distance. It's probably not going to fall dramatically. The track temperature is coming down. It's still 42 degrees. So Phil Brown is probably the sick of the sight of the rear of this Cooper. So coming up the hill, a little bit of a crest. Brown maybe fancying an outside line there, but not quite. Coming down the hill. Unfortunately, he's given John Van der Geest a little bit of a nudge. He can't slow that Lancia D50 down. Masaryk is going to come across two drivers here that have come together and takes advantage. So Masaryk now to 7th place. So costly mistake. I don't know if Phil Brown had locked up there, but he couldn't quite slow that Lancia D50 down. So maybe that Lancia D50 may be struggling a little once the wet weather has appeared. So you can see the track has got a little darker, a little wetter, but the spray hasn't quite appeared. I was actually afraid that Masaryk was going to appear on the scene and not know that two cars were stopped, but I think they were possibly in a place that Masaryk could pass. But John Van der Geest possibly undamaged, but Phil Brown has got to rethink his braking points for now. The track condition has changed. Puddles are starting to appear. But now the lead is down to 6 seconds. So keeping an eye on that lead. So it's now a three-way fight for 6th place. So John Van der Geest originally is getting chased by a D50. He's now getting chased by a Ferrari 246, so a very similar engine note. You can see that the track is getting a little bit wetter on that outside line. Starting to form. Still yet to see any spray. Lap times have dropped by about 2 to 3 seconds, so drivers are taking it very, very easy. So it must be getting a little bit slippy out there. So third place is at Lebro. Lebro has gone around on the main straight, and he's dropped down to fourth place, so we missed that unfortunately. That means Labiota is now up to third, so possibly going wide out of the final turn. Masaryk now chasing. So a lot of traffic up in this section here. I'm not sure who that is ahead of John van der Geest, but they were able to let the two leaders through. Possibly Ben Summers in the green Cooper. So it looks like possibly Phil Brown is suffering a little, but now Masaryk is going to try where Phil Brown couldn't. He's going to try run up the inside. Can he get this Ferrari stopped? He can. He looked like very, very wide. I was quite worried that he wasn't going to get that thing stopped in turn 1, but John van der Geest fancies a run around the outside in turn 3. But thought best of it. Track got a little bit narrow, so now the spray has appeared. So at the worst possible moment, John van der Geest is now getting a face full of spray, and I believe John van der Geest actually runs in VR as well, so this must be extra annoying. So Masaryk now up to 6th place. Chases on to find Cavallo in the Maserati to get a point out of this race, or a couple of points for 5th place. The lap, seeing the lead is now down to 4 seconds. So Kanzarus is suffering a little more in this wet weather than Van Osch is. Maybe the 16 is a lot more better suited to wet weather. So with that costly mistake from Van Osch, perhaps Van Osch is a wet weather specialist, so we'll see him close on the lead. So there's no real worry for 3rd place. Now we are a thoroughly wet track. How wet is it going to get? We've got 30 minutes of rain in some form or another, so this is going to get very treacherous. Simon Barnes in 10th place, possibly gone around. Managed to get going again. So finding it tough in that Maserati, one of 2 in the field. So a little bit of a baptism of fire. Simon Barnes coming back for his 2nd round in this championship, and he's coming back to a wet race. I suppose members have to be thinking they're lucky stars that the admins didn't set it for a wet race at Pescara. Can you mention 25 kilometres of rain? So Phil Brown out in 8th place. Back onto the rear of John van der Geest as well. So was he watching where Masaryk had his inside moment? I was going to say that he could possibly follow through, but John van der Geest went just a little bit wide and hit one of those solid objects. So Phil Brown is now up to 7th place, past John van der Geest, who unfortunately fell foul of one of the trees. So Panzer is just kicking on. 23 minutes to go. The lead is now down to 3.2 seconds, so that all going to be resumed for the lead in short order. Masaryk, now that he's past John van der Geest, you can see the spray of John van der Geest here in the distance there, but Masaryk now kicking on. It's got 8.4 seconds to find. To Cavallo there, but Labiota has capitalised on many people's mistakes. That Ferrari is doing well in And wet weather, time 2:15, so I wonder whether he's just trying to stay consistent in this wet weather. So Simon Barnes up the hill chasing Phil Brown. Not for position though. So we've seen a little bit of sideways action from LeBro. He is still in 4th place. And he's not far behind Labiota, so that's something to play for in the last 20 minutes of this race. So across the start-finish straight, it's looking soaking wet now. So that was the leader gone through, and Gert Van Osch in the Lotus 16 giving chase. So me personally, I prefer perhaps someone to chase, because I can manage my pace a little better. I think Gert Van Osch possibly has just the wisps of spray that you can see from the leader. So Jules de Silva. That'd be, say, brown looking Cooper. It was gold, perhaps, in the sun, but we've got fully overcast conditions. And Cavallo, haven't seen much of him. He's at perhaps a 3rd place finish for Labiota. So looking down on my cheat sheet, Labiota was able to take part in the first 2 rounds. But unfortunately, Labiota hasn't got any points out of this championship so far. He was far up the order, but unfortunately I think mistakes has curtailed some of his progress. It was 12th and a 10th place. Which is unfortunate. He missed out on round 3, but he's back for round 4. Seeing on my track map that 6th place of Masaryk has gone around. So a slight mistake from that Ferrari, who was gaining on 5th place in front, but now Phil Brown cut the gap to Phil Brown, so Phil Brown is in the hunt once again. So the gap for the lead has, looks like it's stabilised a little. It's bouncing between about 3.5 to 4.5 seconds. 20 minutes to go. The drivers have been... That car looks like it's possibly crabbing, so Ben Summers may have had an accident somewhere. That car doesn't look very comfortable at all. So possibly suspension damage. Phil Brown chases Masaryk now. The Masaryk can pull out that gap. That's Phil Brown gone absolutely straight on. So the brakes of that Lancia D50 failing on him. I'm wondering whether he's going to be able to get going. He has got going, but possibly was a big hit, and he looks like he's gone round again. So it was all looking good for Phil Brown, and I believe that's possibly another retirement. He looked like he went completely straight on at the end of turn 1. Could not stop that Lancia, so I don't know whether there's problems with his brakes. Possibly not be overheating, but maybe misjudging how much traction he had in turn 1. And straight into the concrete. So that's unfortunate for Phil Brown. So I'm looking at the track temperature and the air temperature. The air temperature is probably as low as it's going to get, possibly down to about 21 degrees. But the track temperature has only dropped a couple, down to about 40 degrees, but it still looks very slick out there. And the drivers, Kanzurus now being shadowed. Well, in fact, he's overtaking, looks like perhaps Jules de Silva. Simon Barnes still looking on in 10th place. Unfortunately a lap down on his next contender, Ben Summers, in 9th. And then we have Jules De Silva, who is 1 lap behind Simon Barnes in front. So Costas Kanzouras looking on, 17 minutes to go. He has kept it pretty much in the right direction. The gap is now up to 5 seconds. So I wonder whether there's a little mistake from the Van Osch. Easily done in this slippery conditions. What once was nice summery weather is now turned into carefully having to tiptoe around these Italian streets. So Kanzouras maybe half the length of the main straight ahead, and then we have 3rd place Labioda. Now comparing Labioda to Ryan Lebro, Labioda did a 2:18 last time out, or last time around. Lebro 2:21. So that's that fight for 3rd and 4th. He's not going to be on. So Mazarek now able to. He's got the track clear behind now that Phil Brown has unfortunately retired. It should push some of these runners up the place once they unlap themselves. The place of Simon Barnes has unfortunately gone around. And we're just on Simon Barnes. Yeah, the director didn't like me switching to another car, but here you are. Simon Barnes has got going again. So thinking about rounds to come, we have 2 rounds to go in this championship, round 5 and 6. So we're going to be heading to France at one of, I would say maybe a favourite between some of these drivers. It's not a course that I've driven in the 1950s cars, but I've driven it extensively in the 1960s cars in multiple sims. So still looks like Ben Summers is possibly suffering a little with a damaged car. Lebro now 12 seconds behind 3rd place. Looking at Lebro in the championship, currently is in 11th place. Again, has not quite been able to crack the points. 15th in the first round, 8th and then 6th. He has been getting better, and if he finishes where he is at the moment, that will be his best result of the series so far. So a momentary yellow flag from 3rd place, but 3rd place has managed to get going again. Not too much difference between 3rd, 4th and a bigger distance between 4th and 5th though. And we have 6th place. Sometimes seems a little cruel to be in the position just outside the points, but that's the way it is. So a reminder, the points are 8-4. It's a nice power slide by Ben Summers. It's actually 8-6, 4, 3 and 2. So points down to 5th place. Simon Barnes has unlapped himself from Phil Brown. He's now up to 9th place. So Ben Summers deciding to keep that car going. That must be a very ill-handling Cooper. So things we've got coming up, as I said, we've got multiple series happening at Sim Racing Online. And looks like 5th and 6th. A little bit closer together there. So we've got multiple series happening at Sim Racing Online. If I check the calendar, we've got a 1960s championship happening starting in April the 22nd to be exact, so that'll be on Wednesdays. We've also got a Porsche 992 Cup, which is happening on the 11th of April. So those will be Saturdays. And then we've got another series, the Asian Le Mans series. So that will be, I think, P3s and GTEs. I can't remember which now, but that's starting on 17th of May. So distinct difference between a lot of the series that we have at Sim Racing Online. We've also got the Group 5 DRM last championship race, which should be at, I believe it's Zolder, historic Zolder, and that will be broadcast on this channel on 28th of March. And we've also got the ongoing series in our Factor 2 called the Street Fight, so street cars on street courses, which has already started, and the next round will be on the 4th of April. And then we have our, I think it's the penultimate round of our Le Mans Ultimate P2 and GT3 Championship, which will be 5th of April. And the last thing on the calendar will be the 7th of April, which is the Automobilista 2 Porsche Cayman GT4 Cup. So, going on at Sim Racing Online. We're trying to broadcast as many as possible. It's not always possible to do it, but I broadcast stuff when I can, and see my broadcast partner Rob Milliken, we broadcast the Le Mans Ultimate series together. So lots of sim racing going on at Sim Racing Online. Who knew? Who knew? So John Van der Geest still kicking on. It looks like Gert Van Osch to be lapped by the second place car. Van Osch has dropped back a little, 7.5 seconds. Hasn't been able to push as much in the wet weather as perhaps he maybe wanted. And it doesn't look like a dry line is happening either. So 10 minutes to go. I'm not seeing a dry line. Yellow flag from Romain Lebreau. That was a brief yellow flag, and he's managed to get going again. I said that, and he's gone around again. But he has got going a second time, so John Van der Geest in 7th place. And that's second, just behind. Had to turn into that corner, it looks like. And Van Osch maybe was expecting that, but Gilles de Silva still going in 10th place. So lap times have dropped from the 2:05s. We're now in the 2:18s. So I didn't really expect the lap times to drop that much, but treacherous conditions on a very twisty street course has slowed a lot of these drivers down. Not pushing an awful lot, particularly through this section. You can't push as much as you think. Kanzura is still kicking on in first place. So he hasn't had, Van Osch in for company at the first part of this race, but I forget Van Osch had that little half spin. He's been pretty much alone. Making his way up from the rear of the field up to a very good current 5th place. So as our 5th round will be at Rouen in France, which is a very favoured circuit from the 1960s. I don't know which layout we're going to be using. Is that Cavallo gone around? It is Cavallo that's gone around. It doesn't seem like that's his favourite part of the circuit, because we saw him broadside across that part of the track before. And place lost. So our last round in this 1950s championship will be in the Netherlands at Zandvoort. Again, an old classic track from the 60s. should be quite epic in these cars. I don't imagine it's going to be as flat out as it will be in the 60s. But instead of walls, you'll be going up the sand dunes. So now the leader has the majority of the front straight to himself. So looking at Cavallo's car, I don't really see any damage. But maybe John van der Geest behind is fancying a piece. So Kanzurus. Usually with the telemetry I'm watching the top speeds of these cars, but they're not stretching any top speed by anyone's imagination. It's tough going, really having to be gentle on the throttle. These cars are powerful, not much grip, and in the wet weather you've got to be very, very gentle on the throttle. So looking at the track now, doesn't look like first and second are the closest battle on track at the moment. Cavallo just letting one of the leaders through. So, just over 6 minutes to go. So another thing with some of the series that we do in R-Factor 2 specifically, we're trying to space out the field with the choice of cars. Users did have free choice of cars in this series. The majority of the drivers did choose the Cooper as being their favoured weapon. But in the 1960s series that's coming up, or 1967 series that's coming up rather, drivers will have to choose a different car for each round. So if I remember off the top of my head, there is a Lotus, an Eagle, a Ferrari, a Honda, a BRM, and a Cooper. So 6 rounds. And did I count 6 cars? Is that correct? So a different car for each track. Just to keep me on my toes. It's the same for the Group 5 DRM Championship. The drivers need to take a different car for the 5 rounds that we had. So down the hill. And it looks like Jules Silva just recovering there. That downhill section obviously getting a little bit treacherous and a little bit slippy. So that looks like 4th place just behind Romain Lebreau. Most of the times we've seen Lebreau, he's been sideways, but he's taken a nice wide entry into that turn, as you would expect. John van der Geest again, probably a lovely time in the wet in the VR headset. So through goes 4th place. Another lap on, I think that's the Cooper of Gilles de Silva. So my predictions at the start of the race, I did think that possibly the heat of this place and the heat that has been put into the track, I didn't expect the weather to come this early in the race. So we did see it gently falling around half distance, and now with just under 4 minutes to go, we're not seeing a dry line at all. So it is the same conditions all the way across the track. I suppose that's maybe makes it a bit more consistent. If you had a dry line, you have to kind of stick to it. Simon Barnes still very close to those walls in the village section, or the town section as I call it. I'd say this throughout this season that drivers have been given different challenges on the different types of circuits they've been given. They've been told to memorise a 25 kilometre circuit. They've had the challenge of Sachsenring with the fast sweeping turns and undulations. They had the challenges of the country roads in Dundrod in Northern Ireland. Thankfully that wasn't in the wet. And then you come here to I suppose you call it a street circuit, with the added bonus of a little bit of wet weather. So that's Masaryk just passing Jules de Silva. And here our leader comes just down the hill. Just over 2 minutes to go. So possibly one more lap after this. I'll have to get my championship table out so I can total up the points. It's a little bit complicated when there are multiple cars not on the same lap. Sometimes the results get a bit screwed up, but the first 5 will score points. That's the most important thing. And we'll see how the championship has changed. So still providing good entertainment. Look to see what the drivers say after this race, if there's any particular feedback on how they found the wet weather in these cars. It can't been easy. Cars with not a lot of grip in the dry, but add the wet weather to them, then it's going to be very, very treacherous. So Labiota circulating around in third. He's very safe for third at this current time. Simon Barnes currently in 9th place. Isn't that clear from anybody else? Cavallo has gone around again, unfortunately. Is that his favourite part of the track? No, this is a different part of the track, so it's just coming down the hill. Through the tree section. So coming through the first part of the section, Masaryk wide line coming into some trees. He had it all the way opposite lock. I think Kanzuris has crossed the line for what will be the last lap. Also seeing that third place of Marius Labiota. Again, the commentator's curse. I said he was comfortable for third place. He's still comfortable for third place. So Kanzuris has led from the start. He had a challenge early on from the Lotus of Gert Van Osch. And someone's just about keeping it out of the trees. And here is Gert Van Osch just keeping it out of the bales there. So, as I said, challenge early on from Gert Van Osch, but that slight mistake from Gert Van Osch has meant that Kostas Kanzuris has had a clear track in front and behind for the majority of this race as he comes around. You can see him up ahead, but he's close but not close enough. The gap is now down to 3.5 seconds, but that's a lot to close in the remaining corners of this lap. Kostas Kanzuris does have a lap car ahead. That is 5th place. So you've got to be very careful. You don't want to throw it away in this final section of the race. So I think Masaryk probably sees the leader behind, which probably means he doesn't have to go an extra lap if he does let him by. But round to the final corner of the course, so we've just got this left-hander and then we will be turning right over that nasty bump. And Kanzuris comes across the line and he will win the 4th round of the Grand Prix of Italy in Napoli. Van Osch coming all over the line. Only 2 seconds adrift to get at the end, but was able to keep it on the course. Labiota Labioda. We just wait for Labioda to come out in the final section. So Labioda is just before the last section of the track, so he's not even got to the third sector, but he is safe. Looking at 4th and 5th, the gap to 4th and 5th is decidedly close, and we've still got the majority of this track to go. So that's 4th, you can see just behind him, that's 5th place. So there's points still on offer in this final section of the race. This could get very dramatic at the end. It looks like struggling for grip in the latter half of the section. We'll switch to Labioda just coming across the line to finish in 3rd place. Nicely done, but 4th and 5th. It's not over yet. It does look like Ribeiro has been able to pull a little bit more of a gap. Slight mistake, that's him in the wall. So maybe the panic is setting in. He's seeing a car behind him. It's getting a little bit closer. Hopefully the car is undamaged as they come towards the line. So last 2 corners of the track. He just needs to keep this going for this left-hander. And then through to the right. So keep it on the course. The finishing line comes up quite early and they're going to finish not far apart. It was within a second. So a very tight finish between 4th and 5th. So let's have a look at the results. So let's look down my list so we can look at the results of the race. So everyone has crossed the line. So I can put on my spreadsheet who finished where. So Costas Kanzaras did come across the line in 1st. He was able to keep it going, particularly in the wet weather. The challenge of Gert Van Osch did appear, but he was able to keep it together. So Gert Van Osch matches his best result, getting in 2nd place. He would possibly love something a bit further up. Get on that top step. And then we see Labioda coming, staying on the track somewhat. Currently 12th in the championship. He'll be well pleased with a 3rd place. Romain Lebro cutting it down to the final few corners. We did see him get a little bit out of shape for the majority of that race. And nearly, we saw him clatter in the wall a little. And Masaryk, who had come from near enough the back, I think, was able to get up on the rear, but couldn't quite. It was a bit too little too late, and Michael Masaryk grabbing the last points of this round in 5th place. 6th place was Jim Cavallo. We did see Jim Cavallo broadside across the track in the village section, but managed to stay in 6th. And early on we saw John van der Geest battling with Phil Brown and Michael Masaryk, but comes home in 7th. 8th is Simon Barnes. And Simon Barnes going back to the series, as I say, baptism of fire, coming back to a very tight street circuit and a wet circuit as well. We also saw Ben Summers. The majority of that race looked like he was handling a car that was grabbing on 3 wheels, but managed to drag it back to the to the finish for a 9th place. And then Gilles de Silva grabbing a 10th. And if we go over the page, we'll see the rest of our finishers. Unfortunately, they won't score. These are our DNFs. So Phil Brown early on was in that battle with John van der Geest. seemed to have problems with the brakes. I'll be interested to know what happened with Phil Brown, but he will still grab 11th place. Julian Bors again seemed to have a little bit of a problem early on in the race. Finishes in 12th, and he was 3rd in the championship, so points lost for Julian Bors. Unfortunately, Estrella will come home in 13th. And then we had unfortunate retirements from Maddie Shepherd and Tony Talviti, our 2 top point scorers in the first few rounds. I think technical problems may have fallen foul of those 2, so they've dropped some points this round. So this is going to shake up the championship quite significantly. So I'm just going to export the points so we can see the updated points. I did have my camera on some of the leaders at the start, and it did seem like a few people were out of place, but I'm not quite sure what happened. We'll have to have a look at the replay and see what really went down. So let's see if I can save my points to the game. Standings, there we go. Right, if all this has worked, all the championship standings should be updated. Indeed they are, so there is no difference in championship lead that we can see. Maddie Shepherd still somehow tops the table with 22 points, but now Gert Van Osch has popped up to 2nd place, and Tony Talviti has dropped down to 3rd. Now Julian Bors, without scoring this round, has now dropped down to 4th as well, but Kanzurus with that win popped himself back up to 5th place in the championship. Masaryk getting good points from this round in 6th, and Labiota 7th. Cavallo still hovering around that 8th place in the championship, and Labro, they're all on equal points down the bottom of the table. John van der Geest in 10th place. So what an interesting round, a very interesting round for a lot of these drivers. I've been wondering what their feedback is going to be when we come to the last round. So the last rounds, if we look at where we are, so that was the 4th round of this championship. We're going to be going to Rouen on the 2nd of April, and then our last round will be at Zandvoort on the 9th of April. I'm very interested to see if there's going to be any different weather in those races, but just a reminder that at simracingonline.co.uk you can sign up with us. We do have lots of R Factor 2 leagues, Automobilista 2, breaking into Le Mans Ultimate as well. So go to simracing.co.uk and sign up and join us, and maybe we'll see you on the broadcast as well. So thank you everybody for joining us for this round. I know it's been a bit sunny, it's been a bit wet, but we got through it in the end. So thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.